Hello and welcome. My name is Tolola Falashe, and this is Decrypting Relationships with.
Olu Benson. And
Lanre Adeoye.
Corey
and
Allen.
And we have Corey Day with us as well. So welcome everyone. Yes, before we jump into today's topic, we just always like to state our disclaimer that we are doing this podcast not as qualified therapists or counselors. We're just very passionate people trying to put nuggets out there on helping people have healthy relationships. Okay. Anything to add, Olu?
no, you've just summarized who we are. We're just
Yes, fantastic.
we just want people to be happy.
Yeah. So today we're very excited to have Larry is back with us, and we have a special guest. Corey Day is joining us for the first time, and and there's Olu and I. So Olu, what we discussing today?
Well, today we're talking about the very hot topic of social media and its influence on relationships. And I'm sure everybody's aware there's so many facets to it, so we won't even try to cover all of it in one day. But we will start breaking and unpacking the areas that we think people could learn from and some of the experiences we've heard of. And yeah, just trying to educate like we try to do.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So where do we begin?
We will be touching on two aspects today. So really, we are trying to understand how social media influence could actually impact our core values as individuals when we're trying to go into relationships, and also trying to understand our self-worth and trying to understand how to process how social media pushes self-gratification to us and how we interpret that in our relationships. So those are the two areas that we're looking to break into today and see how we do with those. So taking it from there, we have two young people with us today, and they are very active in the social media space. So we are hoping that based on some of the experiences that they've been aware of and some of the ones that we've been aware of, we will be able to touch on this. From our previous recordings, we have always alluded to the fact that building up to a marriage, which is the ultimate in most relationships, it's a journey. So you start out from getting to know each other, getting serious with each other, and getting to understand each other. And we think that based on the influence that we know that social media has globally, it's a good area to start looking at, okay, what from the social media do you bring into your relationship that might not necessarily be a healthy perspective of a relationship? So that's really the angle that I'm hoping we can take it from. So I'm going to ask one of our youth, Lanre first, if he can shed some light on some of his experience or exposure to how social media tends to affect people's core values or what's brought into a relationship that's just about what the social media is showing or showcasing. And also, so let's start with that first.
I think a lot of people do a lot of things for just social media. For example, when like the whole Black Lives Matter movement was going on, I don't think many people went there for the right purposes. I think people went there just to take their Instagram photos or just for the retweets and stuff like that. So I think people um, do it just because they want to be seen in that social media light. They want to be that. I wouldn't call them an influencer, but they just want to be seen in that light, and they want to feed off the energy that social media gives. Um, Sometimes it could be very good energy, sometimes it could be bad energy, and the way it affects like relationships, I see a lot of um, people in relationships, and they're just looking at people like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, and they're looking at their relationship, and they're trying to adapt what they see from them influencers on TV, and they're trying to adapt it into their relationships. Or when that doesn't really make sense because they're in a completely different social status to you and your partner, but they're trying to adapt their things into your relationships. It won't work in a sense. It won't work in a way, and it won't benefit you guys. So it's just a thing of also remembering your core values when you are in a relationship. Don't do things just for the sake of social media, because in the end of the day, social media can either make you or it could break you.
Okay, thank you for that intro. I think I'm going to have to ask Korede too what his perspective is regarding social media. Unfortunately, we haven't got any young female on the panel today, but we will go with what the young men are telling us, and then we'll see what we do in our next sessions. So, Korede, over to you. What will be your experience and your perception of social media and its influence on relationships?
I probably agree with a lot of what Lanre has said about how we look at social media and how you try and portray a certain person on social media. And I think that's probably the most important part, because ultimately you're portraying an idea of yourself to other people that you think will get you the most likes or the most respect or the most interaction. So the way that affects relationships is that you start dissociating from yourself, your actual self, and you're associating with the like, I don't know, the pseudo self that you've portrayed on social media. And I would say that by like having that like cognitive dissonance between who you are and who you're trying to portray, it doesn't allow you to be open and realistic in the things you're dealing with within your relationship, and focusing on the more important sides of the relationship dynamic.
Okay, thank you for that. So I would say, because I'm a mother of someone, my two children are, they are very active in the social media space. And from my brief observation, because I'm not active in the social media space, so I'm very old school. So just to contribute to that, because I see a lot of things being shared and people, like you said, Korede rightly said, there's a pseudo personality that's portrayed on social media, and anybody could be whatever or whoever they want to be, as long as you don't have the direct contact with them in person. And I think that is where the danger lies, because there is an element of a false personality that's being presented more often than not. And you could write and portray yourself to be this person that you really aren't. And from some of the stories I've heard, people get lost in that game, because I see it as a game. Sometimes you tend to lose yourself because of who you're trying to portray yourself to be. And I think that's one of the really dangerous bit. So when you start hearing things like, I got catfished, initially I didn't understand what that meant until I started watching some programs, because it just meant that you lured people to believe you're this person and presented yourself. And then when they actually saw you, it wasn't what they bargained for. And I think also the danger for me is the fact that all these games are really messing with other people's hearts, because there's some genuine people. I'm not going to knock social media as all bad, but because you have some really genuine people who are really honest on it. And when people's hearts and emotions are being toyed with, because some people are bringing influences that are not sustainable, it just becomes a very dangerous and a very messy ground to start a relationship off. So that's going to be my contribution. So Tolu, I don't know, from your experience and interaction with people our generation and younger, what would be your take on that?
Thanks, Olu. I think for me, I have often wondered, and guys, you might be surprised that we didn't have social media when we were like at the stage of finding the one that we're going to get married to. So it was a completely different world. And I often wonder if my ideal, the person I would eventually want to settle down with, if that idea or the image of that person would come from, what I see portrayed on social media, because I really don't know. And so I wonder if maybe the younger people can maybe even shed some light. That does social media have that much sway in shaping the opinions and setting standards for, the kind of people we go out with, and they must maybe look a certain way. The guys must drive a certain car, or maybe not, or have certain qualities. And maybe a second question for the young people would be, does, because I mean, when we were growing up, Olu, I think we had this idea of, we had this path almost mapped out for us. Get your education done, find a really good partner, settle down, get married. And I wonder if social media has changed that sort of like path. And now, because I don't know if, again, maybe the younger people can explain to us or enlighten us. So those are just two questions that, and I hope it makes sense.
Okay, let's address those, because that's why I said we are here to learn from the younger ones, because a lot of these things are alien to some of us in my generation. So we have to know how they are dealing and coping with this. So I think I'll ask Korede to handle this one first, please. Korede, what are your thoughts on the questions that Tolu just posed?
So in response, I guess, to the first question about how much sway it has, I think I read something the other day that said like the TikTok generation, which is like another new social media, have probably never existed a time where they're not on the internet 24/7. And it's like a thing where like these young people, these youth or children in like their quote unquote formative years, all they've been on is the internet, and all they've been on is social media, and that's like the way they interact. And so if you think about those years and how much you're still finding out about the world and yourself and your place in it and who you want to be, I would say that it's very easy for social media to have a massive pull on how those people define themselves, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
Okay. And the other question?
What was the other question?
Seeing the image of your partner being kind of created or being formed from social media interaction.
Yeah, I don't think that is a major problem to an extent, because obviously if you're actually going to have a partner outside of like the catfish dynamic, you are going to meet them in real life and understand who they are. But that image is like, could be something that deters you from someone or can make you want to pursue someone even though it's not necessarily healthy for you. So then that's the other perspective on that.
Okay. Larry, any experience or any comments in those areas?
I totally agree with what Korede said. Like this TikTok generation, like I've seen a lot of young kids, especially my little brother. He can be on there for like 5 hours straight, just scrolling through. So I think a lot of that sort of generation, social media has already got a big pull on them as we're speaking. It's about, hopefully they understand it and differentiate their personality and their real self from social media, and show people who they really are, not just this facade or just this that they are on social media. Because if they do that, then they might as well run with it, with that facade, and that can be a dangerous thing to do, because it could lead you in so many different directions. And then when you look back in a few years, you'll be like, how did I get into this position? But really and truly is how you portray yourself to people. Only the real people know who you really are. So that's for me. So that's why for me, I've always kept it real with anyone I've ever like interacted with personally or on social media. What was the second question? Sorry.
Forming the image of your partner based on social media expectations.
I don't like, for me, my partner is my partner. I don't kind of see why social media will have an expectation of the person I'll try and date or the person I'll try and get to marry, because social media doesn't know the real me. As in, like, I think most people are characters on social media. They don't put their full personality out there. And I'm kind of I keep everything kind of private to myself. So, but for other people, it's different. Like their relationship is based off the social media and the gains they get from it. So I think it's different for every young person, I guess.
So therein lies the challenge that we're trying to address here, because you have spoken from a very mature angle in terms of social media doesn't know you.
No, it doesn't.
And I've heard stories of people who are truly heartbroken when someone unfriends or whatever terminology, or unfollows them, unfriends them, whatever terminologies are used. They are really like, they are monitoring how many
Absolutely.
followership, how many likes they get. They post a picture, not they're expecting 1,000 likes and only 10 people liked it. They are really in that space whereby everything is about being validated. Their self-worth is taken off social media, being given that. So how do you think people who are caught in that web, because you, like I said, you've spoken like a mature person who's probably experienced something that you've kind of dissociated yourself from the fact that social media is what it is. It's a fun stage to be, but I'm still real me. Some people have lost that in the reality of who they are. So based on what you know and the impact I'm sure you've seen in your generation, the reason I'm really pushing this is that this is really your generation that has really been caught in this. And then going down, it's actually worse because you're like in the middle of it. You were raised by my generation of people who didn't have social media at all. And then you grew up with it to some extent. And then you now got into a world where suddenly social media is everything. And then you now have the next generation who are just in social media. That's who they are. That's what they know.
Yeah.
So how do you think some form of education or realization of what this is doing can be brought to the attention of the younger people without them feeling you're judging them or you're telling them how to live their lives?
That's a very good question, but it's a sense of you can't let social media control your life.
Okay.
You got like the younger generation needs to understand social media. It's like some aspects of it, it's all a facade. It's all fake. It's all fake. They do it for, as I say, they do it for the views. They do it for the money. Once they get the money, they drop you like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, I think this is just to reemphasize that as a someone who's just trying to who's seeing some of these things, and it's just I think what Lanre and what Korede have said, just to kind of emphasize what they've said, is really that people need to be aware of who they are first, because this is why we said though you need to understand what social media is and what your core values are as an individual, and you need to get to the point where there is a clear-cut line between both. The minute you start to interweave them or you allow them to cross over, people could get lost. You could get lost in knowing who you are or what you're about because you're just going with the flow. So Tolu, what do you think of that? What do you know in terms of just based on the questions you've asked? The young guys have answered the question, they've given their responses to the questions. I feel, they have a good point, and also extending to the fact that those of us who grew up in a no social media generation, not having to deal with our children so hung up on it, and then the next generation even just so like they are swimming in it. What do you think? What can you say to just kind of put something out there to encourage our listeners to remember kind of like what this thing is and how they handle it?
Yeah, cool. When Korede mentioned something earlier on about how people's images consciously or unconsciously are molded, right, by the suggestions thrown out. Am I right, Korede? Something like that, right?
Yeah,
I think both of them are.
Yeah, both of them said so. And I think it's more the unconscious sort of like suggestions and molding that I'm kind of like more concerned about. Why? Every time I kind of like browse through maybe, I don't know, Instagram, Facebook, I notice that there is a particular type of model, the lashes, the eyelashes, those really spider looking eyelashes. Now, I don't mean to disrespect, but this is what, and I'm an old man, right? So I think I'm allowed to express it that way. Or the hair, okay, some of the hair look okay, but sometimes, you can tell that, whatever. And of course, nowadays, there's a lot of reconstruction, bodily reconstruction of young people, young ladies, or maybe even whatever, ladies. And I'm thinking, do impressionable young men and young girls, young women actually unconsciously feel pressurized to keep up with sort of like the standard set? Again, I don't know. And again, how does that relate to, we've talked about self-esteem. If you have good self-esteem, self-worth, obviously you go out there and relationships can be healthy, and so basically I think all I'm trying to say in a nutshell is, how do we raise the awareness? Is there an awareness there that, we are okay to be ourselves without falling into the trap of wanting to look like what the image that's maybe perhaps social media is trying to put out there, like I said, with the figure and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just being brutally honest here. And I think secondly, the other thing I wanted to say is this. We mentioned, again, I'm very reluctant to mention names, but I guess their celebrities and their public figures, so I can't help but. So the Kim Kardashians and the Kanye West, I believe they're divorced at the moment, right?
I think they're looking into it.
They're looking into it. And I think when you look at a lot of influencers, again, I don't want to, it's not a sweeping statement, but I think on average, a good proportion of them get married and then they divorce. They get married and they get divorced. And I'm wondering if that is also almost reinforcing a pattern, and maybe people think, oh, you know what, celebrities do it, it should be okay, And again, I don't know if it has that much impact in society and on relationships. And so does that put pressure on the relationships?
I would expect so, because you're literally living under the world's microscope when you're in the shoes of the people you just mentioned, for instance. Because I think recently I heard that the woman has some hundreds of millions of followers. I'm thinking, how are you supposed to cope with that? Because when you're looking to that and people are pushing so hard, all these people who are following you or befriending you, they are monitoring your life, and people do comment. No matter how thick-skinned you are, your life is being scrutinized, and these are the kind of hurt, and I think the kind of pressure that a lot of people do not see, because such a person will not come on social media and tell you how heartbroken or how distraught they've been by the comment. They still have to keep up the facade and let everybody believe that their lives are all good, because the followership means money. It's catching for them. And this is why average people, like Larry said initially, that you need to realize that your social status is so far different to those people's. So if people are trying to live their lives by this celebrity standards and whatnot, it's just unsustainable. It's not realistic, and it's not the real world, because you haven't even got the money to back it up, because these people can drop whatever they want to drop like it means nothing. They've got sponsorships from all these designer houses. An average person trying to be like them doesn't even have a good salary. And then you're putting yourself under this pressure to wear the same wigs, to wear the same eyelashes that cost God knows how many hundreds or whatever of dollars to just get one. So it's just unnecessary pressure that we are putting ourselves under. And in terms of education, I'm not sure, because I've heard so many psychologists come and tell you to explain and emphasize the dangers of social media. Unfortunately, it's almost like a catch-22 thing, because whether we like it or not, social media is here to stay. But how do we educate ourselves to know which part of it is healthy or not? And like I said, money is also another powerful thing. The people who are benefiting from this hurt and this harm that these platforms are doing to the people, they're making so much money off of them that they're not going to relent. So there's constant pressure for you to be on it. Everything. I do a simple search on Google, and it's almost like a life history. Something is popping in the background that's asking you to click on something else. Yeah. And if you're not disciplined enough, the distraction is always there. And this is why I think hearing it from the younger people who are in there and having a very good head on to say it is not the be all and end all of who you are, and you shouldn't really look to it to define yourself. I've actually said it in a way that I hope reaches out to the younger people that we're trying to reach out to at this stage of a relationship, because these facades cannot be sustained. If you go into a relationship, if you're really serious to build a life with somebody, you have to be true to yourself. You have to know who you are. You have to love yourself for who you are and wherever you are in life. And then you can build a future with somebody. So I don't know, Korede, Larry, if you have anything to say. Like I said, we don't have a young lady's voice on this platform today, so it would have been nice to hear what the girls have to say, especially with all this reconstruction engineering going on with a lot of the women and all that. And, the level of, makeup that we have to wear, well, thankfully I'm not in that space, that they have to wear just to feel that they are being accepted in some form or shape. I think these are the kind of pressure that, maybe you men can speak to say, and reassure some of these young people, because at the end of the day, a lot of them are doing it to get some form of attraction to the opposite sex. So you guys being here, maybe you can put something out there. I've been said everything that you've said so far and being true and honest to kind of put some word of reassurance of what your expectations are as young men looking to get into serious relationships, to say, this is who you are. These are your expectations of who you want to get into a relationship with.
And I see this mainly affecting Black girls. There's this whole conversation of, light skin, like us. For example, they'll say someone like me and Corey are probably attracted to light-skinned girls, this, that, the third. And half the time, that's mainly not even the case. When it comes to like trying to get to know someone, I'm trying to get to know them for themselves. I'm trying to get to know their personality. I want to know if we can vibe together. It's not about how you look. It's not about your figure. It's about how you can positively influence my life in a good way. So, and then when it's coming to like running with you've just got to be so careful that you just don't run with this facade that social media gives you. Because once you're in it, once you're in 2D, it's very hard to now come out of it and portray the real you, because you've already portrayed a lie to the world. So then once you're trying to present the real you to the people, it's like they won't even believe who you are because of social media.
Okay, thank you for those words of wisdom. Korede, your turn. Anything for the ladies who are doing everything they can to get your attention?
We love you, by the way. Those ladies.
I think it's Larry's attention, not mine.
It's important to say. It's important to say because they don't feel loved by us Black men. They don't feel protected. So
that's another topic for another day. That's a very heavy one.
Yeah. No, we do love the Black queens out there. We really do.
Thank you for that reassuring words, statement, Larry. So Korede.
I think there was something Larry said earlier in the session about how it's that you're portraying a character or it's a character on social media. And I would say that even goes beyond social media. So even the way you interact with some of your friends, people at work, even your family at times, it's maybe who you want them to see you as rather than who you actually are. And I think in that you can find like the solution to this is like, it's okay to maybe be aware. As long as you are aware of what you are doing when you're using social media, the experience and the way it affects you is a lot less, I guess. Even though it is a sort of like all-encompassing thing that you can't escape. If you are aware that there is yourself and there is this person that people think you are, and you actually spend time in silence and solitude, just reflecting on how what you're portraying is affecting you or how it's different to who you are, it's a lot easier to just to be able to deal with the problems that come with social media, I think. And when you relate that to issues with body image or appearance that men and women both face probably, it's just a thing about being secure in yourself and not anyone else's standard, just like your own standard or a higher being standard, God's standard, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. So We're almost at the end of recording. So Tolu, any words of wisdom from you on this topic?
Wow, words of wisdom. Words of wisdom. That's a tough one. Well, all I can say is, I mean, I do empathize with everything that is going on. The world is changing really rapidly, and I think all we can say is, we've always said it on this podcast, that to yourself be true. If you can be true to yourself, if you can find your core, you can build your value system, your belief system, then you can anchor yourself and your identity to your beliefs, because otherwise you'll be getting pulled left, right, and center, and that doesn't help the individual, and it doesn't help relationships. So I think that's the thing. Just we'll continue to reiterate that: find your core, find your values, find your beliefs, and invest in getting that established within you, because it is a very, very difficult thing to establish, because there's a lot of suggestions out there in the world. So yeah, so that's the only thing I can say. But I do empathize. I really don't know how I could have, how I would have adjusted. Seriously, if I was a young person right now, because we didn't have any. Well, we had some pressures, we had peer pressures, but this is next level peer pressure, isn't it? Because it's constantly on your phone. It's you can't turn away from it. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it.
So thank you guys for all those contributions. So just to wrap up from my end, I think it's all been said. And like I also said, and it's been made clear that social media is here to stay anyway, but I think it's just a matter of building the emotional intelligence to understand how to interact with it. It definitely has its good sides, because, you could do so many positive things via social media. At the same time, it has its really damaging side. And that is the bit that we're hoping that in time we are able to kind of start addressing, to see how people can start interacting with the social media in a more healthy and positive manner. So that's really what we're trying to do here, such that when you get into a relationship, it's about you as a person and not about an image that you're trying to portray. It's about you knowing your self-worth, knowing who you are, being confident in who you are, as opposed to what some person is saying about you, or how many likes you got because you posted a photo of yourself, and all of those. Because I have seen some of the heartbreak that some of the validations that are expected from social media have cost people. And people really get depressed. It's worrisome that people get depressed because some person who you've never met, they did something or disconnected themselves from you, and you feel it's the end of the world. So please, the idea is just for us to start reassess so many positive things. We can't say that enough. We're not dissing social media, and it's here to stay anyway, so we really can't get away from it. But the elements of social media that are damaging are the ones that we're hoping that we can keep addressing and keep educating people on. We've all spoken about being educated and being well informed. And until you get that, because when information is power, education is power. And until you know how to handle this, and you start hearing it from younger people, from older people, some of these dangers might not even be so blatant. They might not be so obvious to you. You just think, oh, everybody does it, let's do it. But until you start hearing it from a different perspective, you probably don't realize how much damage this thing could actually bring into your life. Hence, having these conversations with younger people. So we're cutting through all the demographic to say, whether you're young or you're older, as many people as are interested in going into a healthy relationship, this platform is really here to speak the truth, to open up people's eyes and express a lot of truth on this platform, so we can help in the journey of having a healthy relationship. And that's what Decrypting Relationship is about. So yeah, so for this week, I think I'm done. My name is Olu Benson. Thank you for listening. I'm from Tolu.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. Till it's been a good one. Thanks for all the insights. It's been amazing.
Larry and Korede, your goodbye statements, please.
Nah, just thank you for having us. As I said, it's all about us trying to educate people like our parents, and just to make them understand that, you know, we're really out here taking in the things that you guys have taught us, and we're using it to good effect. So yeah,
Great.
thank you for bringing us on this platform.
And finally, Korede, our first timer.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. Hope I can be back again sometime, and yeah, I hope these discussions continue because I'm enjoying it.
You bet it will definitely continue because we've just opened up a can of worms today. There is so much, there is a lot to be said about social media, its influences, and whatnot. So we will be unpacking as time goes by. So thank you all for listening, and have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Au revoir.
Take care.